WNSTV channel. Big thanks to CJ Mosley for joining us on Tuesday night at Buffalo Wild Wings and Owings Mills for the Bone Marrow Registry. We'll be back there on Monday night for our best seat in the house competition, as well as our Blazing Wing Eating Challenge. And don't forget, Thursday night, Greenmount Station, the place to be. Zach Orr joining us from the defense, and Alex Lewis joining us from the offense, and the Ravens getting ready to go up to the Meadowlands. Still a few seats left on our Giants bus as well for Sunday. You can email me nasty at WNST.net or find the trips tab on the website. This guy covers the National Football League at NFL.com. He's also out on Twitter under his own name, which is Connor Orr. That's Connor with one N, CONORORR, just like Orrsville was here 50 years ago at Memorial Stadium. Welcome Connor Orr back onto the program. What's going on, man? Nothing going on in Baltimore. Nothing to see here. Just firing an offensive coordinator at 9:30 on Monday morning, man.
Yeah, I mean, we're only a quarter way through the season, and it's interesting. They did it at a time where there's still a lot of change left to be made. I mean, the last time they did this, it was in December, right before they won a Super Bowl. So it's a very interesting move here by the Ravens, and we'll see how it works out.
By the way, second time now they've lost to the Redskins, and as a guy who hates the Redskins, because I'm of that age from Baltimore when the Redskins became our local team for 13 years under Joe Gibbs. So there's a lot of angst here about the Redskins in general, but it's really fascinating that the team's fired its offensive coordinator before 10 a.m. twice now after losing to the Redskins. It's a little weird, but this certainly puts a little more pressure on Harbaugh and more pressure on Flacco, quite frankly, to perform, right?
Yeah, I mean, especially, Flacco was kind of one of the more vocal critics of Trestman's offense. And, there were certainly some things that he was calling that deserved the firing. I mean, Terrence West is averaging 5 yards a carry and is not as big of a part of that offense as he needs to be. And the vertical component of that offense is almost non-existent. So you have a guy in your staff, and Marty Morningwig, that's finished in the top half of yards and one of the best explosive play coordinators, and he's already on your staff. So I think, it was definitely the right time to make a move. But like you said, this is kind of what Flacco wanted. So you kind of want to see some immediate results out of this.
Well, and this is a relationship business, right? I mean, when Marty Morningwig became available, came in, and all the years of working together in Philadelphia and being there as a QB coach, there's been a lot of that going on. This is the fifth offensive coordinator Joe Flacco is going to walk into a meeting room with in 5 years. I mean, going back to Cam Cameron and then Jim Caldwell, and then, of course, Kubiak didn't stay long enough. Joe's adjusted to these different guys, and I think, and I know I've sat and talked to him about this when I wrote the book 3 years ago. He has different relationships with all these guys. He loved Jim Zorn, right? Had Jim Zorn stayed and Cam Cameron gone, Jim Caldwell might have never been called in. So this should be interesting because it's almost an endorsement of Marty by Joe at this point.
I think so. And, I don't think that there's any reason not to. I mean, Marty Morningwig's a very good offensive coordinator. He was very good in Philadelphia for a long time. I think those Jets years were an anomaly. I mean, you saw Rex Ryan already fire his offensive coordinator for not, running the ball 50 times a game. And that's not what Marty Morningwig is. He's a different guy. I mean, there's a lot of vertical components to the game. I think the Ravens have a lot of good vertical talent on that offense. And so, it could be a match made in heaven. I mean, and Joe Flacco is smart enough to know what he wants and what is best for the team. So I think this could be something that ends up sparking the offense.
What a league, right? I mean, we're 3-2 at this point, beating up on 3 bad teams. Then you start to lose at home the last couple of weeks, and yet you could sit here and say, well, it was an extra point, really. It was a 2-point conversion, really, 2 weeks ago. C.J. Mosley reaching the ball and what would have won the game. Brashad Perryman with 1 foot down instead of 2 feet down. It really is about one touch, one instance. But in the end, the offensive coordinator goes on Monday morning, right?
Yeah, but, a lot of these things, too, I mean, are sort of the response to something that has been brewing beneath the surface. And, obviously we're not in the building, but, I mean, I don't think it's probably difficult to tell that fundamentally there were some disagreements between John and Mark just on, how the offense was running, what kind of players they were utilizing, the kind of the conservative play calling. And so, I feel like even if they would have beaten Washington, it wasn't going to be a convincing win anyway. And I think that this still would have been sort of grounds for a change, because now you have plenty of time left in the season and at least enough where, guys can learn a little bit of new terminology and put a few new things into the playbook.
I think the hardest thing for the Ravens this year has been the offensive line, in that there's been no consistency, and what they wanted to do, what they believed they were going to be doing in May and June and July and into August, hasn't really worked out in September and October. And a lot of teams could say that, but they've had moving parts all over the place, and we're having Alex Lewis out this week. We had Ryan Jensen 2 weeks ago. Ronnie Stanley trying to get him on the field as well. It's hard, and especially when they're already young to begin with and you can't get them in there to play.
Yeah, and I think that kind of has to do a little bit with the change to Morningwig. I mean, he's got a little bit of a deeper bag of tricks, and I think that can kind of negate some of the stress on the offensive line a little bit. Maybe take some defenders out of the box and let them operate a little bit like a normal-based offense. And I think that's kind of part of the theory, but you're right. I mean, health issues, the changing terminology issues, all sorts of stuff. And the offensive line is really what bears the brunt of all of it. But it'll be interesting to see if they can kind of get back healthy, get guys at their natural positions, and get something going here.
We are chatting with Connor Orr. He covers all things National Football League at NFL.com. You can follow him out on Twitter at his name. That's Connor with one N, CONORORR. You get a lot of ORR in there. That's you've got a very interesting name in that way, don't you?
The last name is just a continuation of the first name, so we keep it going.
I remember when Toby Harrah, the palindrome, you could spell it the same way. This isn't a palindrome, but it is interesting. And you got a great dog, too, by the way, on Twitter. For the Ravens, the next couple of weeks getting into the bye, 2 train trips up to New Jersey, struggling Giants team, struggling Jets team. I don't know that the Ravens are a struggling team at this point, but I certainly see, having seen the Giants play on Sunday night, seen a lot of that game against the Packers, there's no fear of going up there the next 2 weeks that they can't win 2 road games here.
No, and a train game like that isn't bad, and especially stressed on travel. It's something that most of the players are familiar with. It's an easy thing to do, and this Giants team is kind of fundamentally broken right now. I mean, they put a lot of emphasis on that defensive line in the off season, but only I think 1 sack apiece for Pierre-Paul and Olivier Vernon so far. The cornerbacks aren't kind of playing up to expectations, so the Ravens are getting them at the right time. Whether or not the Giants think the Ravens are the team that they're going to turn it around against, it remains to be seen. But I do think that this is kind of fortuitous timing for the Ravens a little bit.
The Jets look to be in real trouble, right? Like, they're not looking good on either side of the ball.
The Jets are kind of a broken team that, got lucky last year. You got a little bit of a boon by bringing back, Darrelle Revis, Antonio Cromartie, and, Ryan Fitzpatrick had that kind of once every 5-year season. Reuniting with Chan Gailey, and I think the rest of the league kind of forgot or at least, struggled to defend that offense. But now with Eric Decker down, Brandon Marshall has no one to take the pressure off him. They're running Matt Forte into the ground, and this defense has definitely kind of lost some of its edge, only blitzing Big Ben, I think, on 10%, at least what I counted, of snaps last week. So this is not the Jets team that we saw last year, and it's not a very good Jets team.
They play Monday night out in the desert against an Arizona team that, everyone thought was going to be that 12 or 13 win team this year, and they've had their own struggles. But the Jets are going to have their hands full just on Monday night. We're going to get a depleted version of them, and certainly an unrested version of them.
Yeah, and I think this will be a nice bounce back game for the Cardinals. Everyone kind of expected them to be a 13-win team, but it still wouldn't surprise me to see them be a 10 or 11-win team. And I think that this is kind of a nice launching pad, for that moment. But, the Jets, they absolutely need this game. Brandon Marshall said after the loss to the Steelers that he thought the team was in the perfect position, which I thought was kind of laughable at this point because at 1-4 with no conceivable positives at this point, it's definitely not a good look for this team.
Perfect to be golfing on January 3rd, probably. Connor Orr joining us here from NFL.com. A couple pretty good games this week. I've talked to some folks in Cincinnati this week, and obviously I've talked to some people in Boston just to rub in the fact that the Red Sox lost. But the Patriots have gone in one direction now and got Brady back. Boy, Cincinnati looks like they're in trouble at 2-3. They had this really tough road game. They still got to fly over to London and play the Redskins later on in the month, and they look like a much weaker team offensively than what we've seen in the last 5 years.
Yeah, you still haven't gotten Tyler Eifert back yet. They're one of the least effective teams in the red zone, and that absence can 100% explain why. And then, you lose Marvin Jones and Mohamed Sanu, you lose Hugh Jackson as a play caller, and we've seen kind of, even though the Browns haven't won a game yet, kind of how creative he can get in a game. And so, I think all that sort of rolls together, and, the Bengals had a good thing going, but just didn't want to spend to keep it. And unfortunately, that's what happens when you're trying to break in some new replacement talent, and all of a sudden you find yourself behind in a very good division. And the Steelers, to me, and the Ravens both look kind of head and shoulders better than them this year, and it's not going to be an easy division to play catch-up in, especially if they lose to the Patriots on Sunday, which is likely given how good Tom Brady looked last week.
You talk about breaking in new talent. There's a lot of that going on at the quarterback position, right? I mean, that is the story of the league right now this year. We're going to talk about this Dallas-Green Bay game, the late game on Sunday, probably the best game of the week. And you're talking about Dak Prescott. You're talking about Tony Romo coming back. And you're talking about the biggest brand in the league getting off to this kind of a start with a kid that they never wanted to put under center, right?
Yeah, I mean, Dak Prescott is an absolutely incredible story, and I think it's a testament to, giving the quarterback a run game. We've seen Jameis Winston ebb and flow with Doug Martin and now Jaquiz Rodgers last night, and I think this is kind of the most extreme example. Ezekiel Elliott's on pace for almost 1,800 yards this season, which is just absolute insanity, and he gets better as the game goes on. So I think that totally helps him. But Prescott's making some great decisions. He's making some excellent touch throws, and this is something where I think if people had to do the draft over again, I think there'd be some boards stacked in a different way for sure.
Carolina Panthers getting their feelings hurt now, aren't they, Connor Orr?
A little bit. I mean, this was, those were fans that kind of rode high with the Panthers last year.
Oh, I saw them out in the Bay Area, and they thought they were going to 10 Super Bowls, and they thought they were going to win that one by 3 touchdowns. It really is fleeting. Having won a couple of Super Bowls here, it doesn't last long, like Marvin in Cincinnati. I mean, this New England and Pittsburgh, Denver thing, this is really hard to do, right, year after year, right?
It's incredible. I mean, I remember when we were thinking about the San Francisco 49ers when Jim Harbaugh left and saying that team was set up to go to a couple NFC championship games in a row, and look at how the times have changed even there. But yeah, I mean, Carolina sacrificed their secondary this offseason. They have rookies that both cover corner positions, and I think without experience back there, it shows kind of how fickle that defensive line can be. I mean, they got kind of beat up a little bit against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last night, which is really saying something. So, yeah, I mean, if you're a fan, I think the Panthers are a perfect example of enjoy it while it's happening. Don't make plans for 2 or 3 years down the road.
2 teams on the come that need to show themselves late on Sunday this week. Oakland at home against Kansas City, and Atlanta on the road in Seattle. Oakland, Atlanta, for real or not for real? They're going to be playing in January?
I think Atlanta is definitely for real. I mean, I love what I saw out of Vic Beasley, especially last week. I mean, just kind of punishing down the stretch, and that's what the Falcons needed. They need a closer as a pass rusher to shut down some of those games, and that's not what they were doing last year, even during the hot start. But the Raiders too. I mean, probably the most fun team to watch in football this year. They have, in my mind, the best defensive player in the NFL in Khalil Mack.
But not a very good defense. Isn't that weird, right? I mean, they have this great player. It kind of reminds me of the Ravens in the late 90s when they had Ray Lewis and nothing else.
Yeah. So they have the pieces to kind of get after the quarterback if they need to. But, I mean, they've been benching cornerbacks. They've been rotating linebackers. They've been trying to kind of piece together the rest of this defense. I know, Jack Del Rio getting more involved, kind of calling things and trying to kind of put his stamp back on the defense. But if they can get it at all organized, I mean, this team is great. I mean, they're gutsy. They can come back late in games, and Derek Carr has just been absolutely phenomenal this year.
Juicy little slate of football games this week. Connor Orr will be following it all at NFL.com. You can also follow him out on Twitter at Connor Orr, CONORORR, and he has a lovely creature. What kind of dog is that, Connor Orr?
That is a Cairn Terrier and Shih Tzu mix right there.
You can't say that on the radio. What's wrong with you? Hey, man, great having you on. And enjoy your pumpkin lattes and your Charlie Brown out on your Twitter as well. We'll be following you out on Twitter and NFL.com. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thank you.
You got it, Connor Orr from NFL.com joining us here. You can find me out in the Bayou Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world. If you miss anything here at all, you can download, podcast, listen when you want, where you want, how you want, and you can download the TuneIn Radio app. We come in crystal clear. It's all brought to you by BuyAToyota.com. Our morning newspaper ships at 7 a.m. each and every morning to your email inbox. It is free of charge and brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. Still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life at Planet Fitness. Last but never least, if you were on our WNST text service, you do know that breaking news came at 9:33 on Monday morning when Mark Trestman was fired as the offensive coordinator of the Ravens and replaced by Marty Morningwig. That's how good our text service is. It's all powered up by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard, and Dennis Colatzos will be here on Thursday driving you home from 3 until 5 on the SSV on WNST, getting you ready for Thursday Night Football. Pretty decent game there in Denver and San Diego, as well as a bunch of baseball games this weekend. Toronto, Cleveland, I don't know. Pick your poison. Have your fun with it. We have space left on our bus on Sunday to the Giants game. Handful of seats. If you want to jump on, email me nasty at WNST.net or just click on the trips tab up on the website. We'd love to see your face in the place on Sunday. 7 a.m. We're leaving from White Marsh. It'll be a good time. Well, especially if they win. 4-2 is better than 3-3. Trust me. I know these rides down the I-95 interstate on Sunday evenings. I'm Nestor Nasty at WNST.net. Reaches me. We're streaming live on Facebook Live as well as YouTube on our WNSTV channel. Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, LinkedIn, and anywhere you are, we are. WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.